Welcome back, everyone, to episode 8 of Be in the Room Expert Series, all about how to stop shrinking and how to start leading with purpose in 2026. You probably already are doing these things, but how to enhance these skills to get you going further in 2026. Hey, Trishan, welcome. Hey, Viola, nice to see you. As I mentioned, this is episode 8 of a series of 20 lives that I am doing for the month of January, giving you the tools and the strategies that I use with my senior executive clients to build high-performing teams, to become high-performing leaders, to scale their results, to scale their impact, and also to lead more fulfilling lives altogether. Because again, this isn't just about productivity. This isn't just about, achievement. This is about how do you get to these levels of productivity and achievement and still feel fulfilled at the end of the day. Because if we're not going to feel fulfilled, if we're going to do the work but feel resentful, if we're going to do the work and feel like there's something misaligned within us, then we're just leading ourselves to burnout. So all of these strategies are not just about how to make you achieve more from a on paper success perspective, but also how to get you to a place where you are emotionally in control of yourself, where you are enjoying the journey that you're on, where you're finding purpose in the journey that you're on, and you're finding resilience as well. That is why we're here. So let me say hi to a few people because we've got a lot of folks coming in. Let's just see. Hey, Reese, Rasta Love, Marissa, hi. Hey, Lewis. Hey, Sean. Good to see you. And Duke Nation is here as well. As I've mentioned in my previous lives pore, and I'm going to pin this comment here as well. Much of what I am sharing over these days, again, are tools, are strategies, are things that I cover in the book that I am releasing, which is called Be in the Room, How to Stop Shrinking and Start Leading with Purpose. That book is available right now on pre-order on Amazon, or it becomes available on audiobook and on paperback on January 20th, which is next week. Hey, Randy, welcome. Good afternoon. Hey, DJ Honey Vibes. Hey, Leslie. All right. So if you comment book at any point during this live, you will receive a link to go and pre-order the book so that it arrives on your doorstep when it gets released on January 20th. Once again, if you're in Canada, though, you got to wait until January 20th. All right. Yeah, thank you. About the haters with the blazer. I'm actually dressed today. I put on all the clothes today just because sometimes the schedule is a bit dynamic. I work globally as well, so that means sometimes my times are a little bit different. Like today, I started coaching at 6:00 this morning. So yeah, every day is a little dynamic, but that's what we're talking about now. What we're talking about now is we're talking about how to cope with the dynamicism. I don't even know if that's a word. How to cope, how to achieve results in a world where we are constantly being torn in different directions. Yesterday, if you're with me yesterday, we talked all about the sticky note planning methodology. And this is the plan to take your big, hairy, audacious goal and break it down into smaller, more manageable parts so that you can actually have clear priorities of where you're going and make decisions from that place. Because when you don't have a vision of where you're going, when you don't have clarity to what it is to the behaviors or the habits or the tactics that you need to put in place, it is very easy for you to negotiate your time away to whoever else is in demand. One of the biggest limits to people accomplishing things that they want to accomplish is this belief that there is not enough time. There's not enough time in the day. Who has the time to do X, Y, Z when I have A through whatever going on in my life? So if we continue to maintain that belief that there just is no time for us to do the things that we want to do, because we're so caught up in doing the things that we have to do, then we're never really going to move the needle. And I'm going to break that down for you today because I have the tools to help you overcome that. I have the tools to help you to make decisions on how to use your time. Now, before we get into this, I need to be very serious about this because there are two fundamental laws that I need for everyone watching this live to accept and understand before we move any further. Because if you're not able to understand or accept these laws, then you might as well just log off the live, because whatever I'm showing you here, you're not going to use it. You're not going to use it. You're not going to apply it. It's not going to benefit you. All right. So put something in the comments that lets me know that you're still here and ready to hear those laws before we move any further. All right, so fundamental, just say hi to more people. Hey, Anna. Hey, Life with Diana. Hello, Black Girl and Her Shepherds. Okay, it's nice to see the regulars coming in for this. It's really great because, as I have mentioned in previous lives, the things that I'm structuring these lives in such a way where the skills and the tool sets are building on top of each other, which means that, yeah, it's not necessarily about drop in any time and you'll just get the benefit. It's about doing the fundamental work from here and then kind of moving on up. So in other words, if you come in at week 4 and you haven't watched a lick of what we talked about in week 1 or 2 or 3, it's going to be very difficult to apply. Those of you who are with me for these 30-minute sessions day in and day out, you are building that foundation, you are building that base that is going to make these tools so much more applicable, so much more effective for you, because you're doing the necessary work underneath before you actually get to some of the strategy and planning. Which is why we spent so much time on emotional mastery last week. And emotional mastery is going to come up again, especially when we talk about time, because time, I don't care what you think, it is an emotional variable. Okay. So fundamental law number 1. Fundamental law number 1 is there is no stop focusing on time management. We're done focusing on time management. The title of this live is Fuck Time Management, because you cannot manage time. Doesn't matter what you do. There is nothing that you can do that can cause time to speed up or slow down. Seconds will pass when seconds pass. Days will pass when days will pass. There is only 24 hours in a day. Time passes regardless. You are not in management of time, so stop trying to manage your time. You are going to shift your language from thinking about time management to thinking about focus management, energy management. It's not about how do I spend my time, but it is about how do I spend my focus? How do I make decisions around where I need to focus and where I want to spend my energy? So that's fundamental law number 1. Fuck time management. Okay? Can't do it. Fundamental law number 2, and this is a big one. This is a sentence that I read in Brian Moran's book, The 12-Week Year, and it has stuck with me ever since. And the fundamental law of focus management is that you accept that there is no such thing as have to. Okay? So, have to. No such thing. I wrote it down here. You can't even see it. Wrote it down here. There is no such thing as have to. Think about all the have to's that you have in your life on a day-to-day basis. I have to be on this. I have to be on this live at 9:00 this morning. I have to take my kids to school. I have to work to make a living. I have to go to this job because I need to pay the bills. We say I have to a lot. And when you accept this idea that there is no such thing as have to, what you put yourself in awareness of and better in control of are your choices and your decisions. Because focus management, time management, what all the management here is about becoming aware of your decisions. And if you are someone who is bought into this theory of I have to, you are not going to change anything. What you are, it's not saying that, your choices aren't hard. So for example, the biggest have to, I have to go to work. I have to work for a living to pay my bills. Let's break that down for a second, because I really want to show you how there's no such thing as have to. You don't have to go to work to pay your bills. You can stop going to work and you can succumb to a different standard of life. You can find other ways. You can invest you could take stock market, whatever courses. You could dedicate your life to figuring out how to be in places where rich people are and figure out how to marry rich. There is no such thing as I have to go to this job in order to pay the bills. There are other ways. I'm not saying those ways are desirable. I am not saying that those ways are the ways that you should go. But what it does say is it puts you in control of your decisions. I am choosing to go to this job because this job allows me the income that I require to live the standard of life that I currently live. That is a choice. You don't have to be there. I don't have to be on this live. I committed to being on this live, but that doesn't mean I have to show up, because at any given point in time, I guarantee you this, if something had happened in my world today where maybe my daughter got sick, someone needed me, something else took more priority, I would make a different choice. So if you are here and you are going to listen to the rest of this, I need you all to commit yourself to catching yourself in the I have to language and moving yourself to the sentence of acknowledging the choice you are making. That's it. Can I get something in the chats that lets me know that you're still with me after this nugget here? Because this is a hard one to swallow, right? I don't have the time because my calendar is back to back. I have to answer emails from my boss. I have to work late hours. I have to work on the weekends. These are choices that you're making, okay? They don't feel like favorable choices, but again, these are choices that you are making. All right, so if you're still here, let's talk about this. So yesterday, again, we talked about the sticky note method. And in the sticky note method, we started having conversations about, okay, well, now if you've done the sticky note method, you have a sense of what it is that you are working towards. You've already outlined for yourself what your long-term goal is, and you've broken that down into a year, into a 12-month plan for yourself, 12-month objectives or goals you want to meet, and you've started to break down what are the specific tools, tasks, conversations, etc. that you need to have this month, this quarter, the next 12 weeks in order to move the needle on the goals that you have set for yourself. So you've outlined what those actions are. Those actions are nothing if you cannot figure out a way to create the space for you to go and accomplish those things. So in a world where all of you are busy, choking on the truth is hilarious. In a world where all of you are busy and you want to create something new, you want to say yes to something else for yourself, which means we need to start taking an audit of what we're doing, because every yes that we want, every new yes might require a no. So how do we figure out what that is? I'm going to introduce a tool to you, and maybe some of you are already aware of this tool, but it's called the Eisenhower Matrix, okay? Now, the Eisenhower Matrix was developed by a previous US president, Dwight Eisenhower, who was also a general in the Cold War. Now, the reason why he came up with this methodology, because as you can imagine, in a war scenario, right? Or like think about how volatile your work situation is. Everything's always changing. There's always reorgs. There's new priorities. Someone's got a new project. Someone's got a new problem. There's a new fire to put out. Things are changing on a constant basis. Now, put that in a war context, and the situation is much more volatile, much more uncertain, much more complex, so ambiguous. So essentially, this general needed a way to be able to prioritize for the day, make decisions for the day on what needed to happen based on the landscape and what needed to be parked, what needed to be put aside. So this was all about where he made decisions about where he, as a general, as a leader, needed to put his focus for that day in order to get through. Now, you can do this for the day, you could do this for the month, you could do this for the week, you do this for the quarter, it doesn't matter. The other thing you need to recognize about this is that this is going to be a snapshot in time for you. So his matrix was based on two different variables. Variable number one over here was about urgency, right? So urgent was not down here. This one was importance and urgency. and urgency. Okay. I don't remember. No, I'm mixing up how I'm doing this. Let me. Urgency was, I was right the first time. My bad. Sorry, guys. I'm out of practice on this. So this is importance and this is urgency. Okay. So when we think about things that are urgent, things that are urgent are things that you drop whatever you're doing and you pay attention and you do them. Because if you do not do these things, there are immediate consequences that you might experience. Okay. So again, it's important. And so what he did is if it was important and it was urgent, this was where you do it. Okay. You do it. And when I say do, I mean drop everything. This is what we focus on. So what are some examples of things that might have immediate consequences if you don't pay attention to it? Let's just say, for example, you're on a phone call, you're on an important phone call, but a child rushes in and they've had an accident. I drop the phone call, I go pay attention to the child, right? Because if I do not address the situation immediately, there could be consequences now. Things like, projects with client deadlines, particular meetings or scenarios or emails. Like there are things, not necessarily broad categories, but like within categories, there can be things where when this thing happens, you drop everything and you do it. So for example, for you, a do might be when you get a request from the VP of the company, you put everything aside and you do this thing, right? When you get a request from a colleague, you put everything aside, you do these things. When a meeting shows up in your calendar, you put everything aside, you go do that thing. Okay. So that is what the do is. It is urgent and it's important. Now, the column over here where we have it's still important, but maybe it's less urgent. This is where we have the decide column. And I like to call a quadrant, and I like to call this quadrant the shit or get off the potty quadrant. Okay. If you think about this, these are the things that are important to you, but if you don't do them today, you're not really going to see the consequences of that for maybe a while. So for example, it may be important to you in 2026 to lose 25 pounds. I don't know the recipe, but to take care of your health, to meditate, to go for a jog every day, right? These are things that if you don't do them long term, you may experience some consequences, but in the short term, the consequences are very small. So therefore, these go into the decide bucket, or what many people do is the plan. They plan to do these things. They become part of their longer term plans or whatever the case is. Now over here, where you have it's not urgent and it's not important, this is where we have the delete pile, the delete quadrant. Okay. So here we just stop doing these things. It's done. We're not doing them right now. Okay. It was important before, it made sense before, but now this isn't, we can't be focused on this. So for example, something that you might put in a delete pile, what a lot of people put in their delete pile is scrolling on Instagram or, attending. This is maybe even where a boundary could exist to say, I'm not attending meetings after 5 p.m. I don't know what the recipe is, but that is what delete is. It is neither urgent nor important. Therefore, we can make a decision to just stop doing it. Then over here, we have the delegate pile. Now, the delegate pile is the quadrant, is for things that are important, still urgent, but it is less important for you specifically to do these things, right? A good example of this might be paying a bill. Paying a bill is urgent because if we don't pay the bill by a deadline, let's just say that, you're going to incur interest charges, whatever the case is. Now, but is it required that you specifically pay that bill on time, right? Or could this be something that could be set up with automation? Does it require your face? It's important and it's urgent, but does it require your face to accomplish it? For leaders, this could look like it's urgent that it's important or urgent that I go to that this meeting is happening, but could I potentially send a delegate in there because the person who I'm sending in there actually has more knowledge and expertise and could contribute more and could just report back to me afterwards? Can I delegate that to someone else? Does it require my face? Administrative tasks, does it require my face? These are some of the things that we need to start thinking about it when we think about delegating. It is important. It is urgent. But is it important that it be your face that accomplishes it? Okay. Now, here's what I want you to do if you are looking at this right now. I want you to kind of like draw it out for yourself, even on a piece of paper, and start to take the things that you are doing every single day and plot out where would you start to place the things that you do on a day-to-day basis? Where do those things fall for you? The meetings that you attend, the routine that you have in the morning, the time that you spend in certain conversations. Starting to think about your days, your weeks in like real detail, and where would you start to place some of these tasks? Not necessarily where you would want them to go, but where they are today. Because this is the starting point of the conversation with yourself. Because if you do not see what decisions you are making, then you are allowing your decisions to be run on autopilot. And that autopilot is usually the reason why things just don't get done. Why your 2026 goals will become your 2027 goals because you didn't move the needle, right? So I'm curious, and let me ask the people in the chat, if you were to do this exercise for yourself, where do you think you would see the highest concentration of tasks? In the do, as it is today, in the decide, in the delete, or in the delegate? Where would you see the highest concentration of your tasks on a day-to-day basis? Take your time with this one. Think about the energy that you have in your day. Are you running around fighting fires all day? You might be in the do column. Are you highly unproductive? Do you feel highly unproductive in a day where you're not really doing anything? You might have a lot in your decide or your delete pile. Maybe you're delegating, but from what I'm seeing in the chat here, the highest concentration is do. And that is extremely common across the board. And the reason is, and this is why I say to you, time is an emotional thing. There is a reason why the highest concentration of what we spend our day-to-day on is in the do. Because it is, again, the narrative, the story that we're telling ourselves is that the things that we're spending the time on are urgent and important. And if we don't do them right now, there are consequences that we're going to face. And what we have found is that things that are urgent are seldom important, right? Things that are urgent are seldom important, but we create narratives around them that make it more urgent and important than what it is, which puts it here. And the reason is why? Because we get a dopamine hit out of getting something done, right? We get a dopamine hit out of fulfilling an ask, maybe of someone else, maybe of someone asking us a question and having an answer. There's a dopamine hit for solving problems. And the more we cram into this do pile, the more we feel like we are solving problems. Problem is, these aren't always the right problems or our problems, right? So again, the other reason why we spend a lot of time here is because this is just easier. In the short-term moment, piling everything in the just do it quadrant is easier. It's easier to do it yourself than it is to delegate. It's easier to prioritize, it's easier to get it done now than to potentially say, I'm going to put it off for another time. It's easier to do it now instead of make the hard decision or have the hard conversation that says, maybe we need to stop doing this altogether. Maybe we need to change the way that we're looking at this. This is the quadrant where things start to leak in from all these other quadrants, because moving them to other quadrants requires a difficult conversation. And to avoid the discomfort, the short-term discomfort of a difficult conversation, we tell ourselves, it's just easier for me to do it. But what does that lead to? When we are sitting here for so long, this is what leads to burnout. This is what leads to resentment. This is what leads to us having things that for ourselves that don't get met because we are too afraid to move things into other columns. So, for example, something in your decide column, something that you have thought about is really important to you this year. Maybe it's a health thing, right? Maybe it's learning the piano. Maybe it's working on your leadership skills. Maybe it's attending these lives. Maybe it's using some of these practices. What we end up doing is we have all these really great ideas of things that we want to do. So we stick, but they're not urgent. So we stick them all in this quadrant. Now, this quadrant takes up energy, right? Like imagine it. This is what we call your back burner. The things that you're not really getting to, but you want to get to. The thing was with a back burner is still using energy. So while you're not accomplishing these things day in, day out, week in, week out, you just see this pile either not moving or growing. That is when you start to feel a drain of energy. And no matter what you do during the day, you still finish your day feeling like, man, so unproductive. So this is why I call this decide, because this is where you need to decide. Either I'm going to do it and make it a non-negotiable, or I'm going to decide to delete it for now. I'm going to say, that's not my focus right now. As much as I would love to work out for an hour a day, that is currently not my focus in this season. So I'm actually going to delete that I'm going to take this thing off the stove, put it in the fridge. I'll cook it again later. I'll come back for it later. That is where, or maybe I'm going to degrade, or I'm going to, not necessarily delete, but I'm going to downgrade my goal for here. So say, I'm not going to work out for an hour a day, but I'm going to decide that I'm going to put the hour a day in the delete, and I'm just going to do 10 minutes a day. That's why I say this needs to be a decision point. Either you shit or get off the potty. And it's not a life sentence. So just because it's not your focus today in this season doesn't mean you can't go back to the fridge later and pick it up and say, all right, I'm ready to eat this now. Okay? So a lot of people do not put things in the delete pile because they're afraid that this is where FOMO hits in. They're afraid to miss out. They're afraid that they're abandoning something that's important. You're not abandoning it. You're just deciding that this is not the season for it, and this is not where my energy needs to go. My energy needs to be in alignment with what I decide goes in my do quadrant. And then, of course, for do, moving things into delegation. And delegation, I could do a whole other series on delegation, because delegation is the most effective leadership tool and the most underutilized. Why? Because we believe that we're much more important than we really are, right? So, and a lot of other narratives that come into this. All that to say is, again, the reason why we keep concentrated in the do pile is because moving things around to other quadrants requires a difficult conversation, either with yourself or with somebody else. And it is easier to avoid that conversation, to avoid that difficult conversation in the moment, than it is to actually tackle it and make a systemic change that is going to give you the permission to go in on your focus. But if you do not decide what your focus is, if you do not decide what matters to you, if you do not decide what your non-negotiables are, you're going to find yourself caught in this loop of continuously negotiating your time away to other people who seem to have it more figured out. That's what happens when you're not internally bought into your own plan. All right. So once again, in order to move anything out, the other thing about this this is where that second law comes into play, right? The second law comes into play with the do when you believe that you have to do it. If you catch yourself saying, it's here because I have to do it, and I guarantee you there's a ton of things in here that are in your do column that you are saying, I do it because I have to do it, I encourage you to challenge yourself and say, what am I choosing? If I am saying yes to this being in the do column, what am I saying no to? And granted, just because you have that conversation doesn't mean you need to change anything. Okay? You don't need to change anything, but you do need to acknowledge the choice that you're making to ensure that it is in alignment with who you are and who you're becoming from that sticky note board that we created yesterday. All right? Okay. This was a lot. If you need more information on the Eisenhower Matrix or how to apply it, it is definitely an easy thing to Google. Leaders use this all the time, not only for their own personal goals, but for also team planning as well. Organizational planning, start, what is it? Start, stop, continue, right? Kind of like your start, stop, continue audit. This is that checkpoint for you. And it's very important that when you do this for yourself, you start with where things are today. Not what you want it to be, not what you wish it would be, but where things are today, because you need to have the conversation with yourself with, when I look down at this matrix, how do I feel about it? Am I okay with this? And is this sustainable? Because if it's not, I might need to start looking at what are the conversations that I need to have with someone else or with myself that will help me to move these things around. Okay. Now, again, throwback to week 1, episode 1, navigating difficult conversations. This is where the experience cube comes into play that you can leverage to help you break that down, to help you plan for those conversations as well. Okay. But you can see why I say that time management is emotional, which is why we need to stop categorizing it as time management. It is focus management. It is emotion management. It's decision management. And those people who are too afraid to decide burn out because they stay in the do column. And this is your opportunity to change that. All right. Tomorrow we're going to take this a step further and help you, because now that we're having a better understanding of where our focus needs to be and where we need to prioritize, tomorrow I'm going to walk you through the practice of prioritization, what it looks like from a day-to-day basis, so that you can end every single day feeling like you are accomplished. You can end every single week feeling like you have moved the needle. All right? You can end every single week feeling like you're making progress towards the things that matter to you. All right. That's what we will be focusing on tomorrow. Now, once again, thank you so much for participating in the live. I'm so glad that you are getting value out of these things, that you are using these tools. As I mentioned, a lot of what I'm talking about is in my book. If you comment book, you will get a link to pre-order Be in the Room, How to Stop Shrinking and How to Start Leading with Purpose, straight to your DMs. You can go pre-order it on Amazon. It will be released on January 20th, which is next week. Next week, the book is coming out. So make sure you comment book, make sure you get your copy, because we're going to dive deep into this. And you have such a cool opportunity to take advantage of the tools and knowledge that people are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their leaders to learn in order to scale performance, scale revenue, scale impact, right? Scale happiness. So we're here for that too. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I will see you tomorrow, where we talk about the practice of prioritization. Taya, shouldn't you be in school? Hey, Taya. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Bye.